Technology is always a two-edged sword. It will bring in many benefits, but also many disasters. If the audience knew what they wanted, then they wouldn't be the audience, they would be the artist. To some degree, Satanism is purely a kind of disease of Christianity. You've got to really be Christian to believe in Satan. Life is a lot more interesting if you are interested in the people and the places around you. So, illuminate your little patch of ground, the people that you know, the things that you want to commemorate. Light them up with your art, with your music, with your writing, with whatever it is that you do. There are two worlds we live in, a material world, bound by the laws of physics, and the world inside our mind, which is just as important. For me, there is very little difference between magic and art. To me, the ultimate act of magic is to create something from nothing. It's like when the stage magician pulls the rabbit from the hat. Magic is a state of mind. It is often portrayed as very black and gothic, and that is because certain practitioners played that up for a sense of power and prestige. That is a disservice. Magic is very colorful. Of this, I am sure. I think that we need mythology. We need a bedrock of story and legend in order to live our lives coherently. Art makes us feel less alone. It makes us think, somebody else has thought this, somebody else has had these feelings. Because our entire universe is made up of consciousness, we never really experience the universe directly, we just experience our consciousness of the universe, our perception of it. So right, our only universe is perception. I love the smell of paper in the morning. It smells like victory. Language comes first. It's not that language grows out of consciousness. If you haven't got language, you can't be conscious. Writing is a very focused form of meditation, just as good as sitting in a lotus position. Of course, Marxism is an example of what Karl Popper would have called a World 3 structure, in that it's got immense power as an idea, but you couldn't actually hold up anything in the world and say, this is Marxism. The Conservative Party is a religion in that they are bound together by belief. Almost any organization has its religious aspects. The roots of the word anarchy are anarchos, no leaders, which is not really about the kind of chaos that most people imagine when the word anarchy is mentioned. I think that anarchy is, to the contrary, about taking personal responsibility for yourself. I like Jacques Derrida. I think he's funny. I like my philosophy with a few jokes and puns. I know that offends other philosophers. They think he's not taking things seriously, but he comes up with some marvelous puns. Why shouldn't you have a bit of fun while dealing with the deepest issues of the mind? There has been a rather unpleasant sensibility apparent in Frank Miller's work for quite a long time. Our environments shape the way we see ourselves. If you have been condemned to live in an area that is pretty evidently a rat run, then sooner or later you're gonna come to the conclusion that you're a rat. The one thing with writing stories about the rise of fascism is that if you wait long enough, you'll almost certainly be proved right. Fascism is like a hydra. You can cut off its head in the Germany of the 30s and 40s, but it'll still turn up on your back doorstep in a slightly altered guise. Don't leave home without your sword, your intellect. Famously, there's not really anywhere to go after nihilism. It's not progressing toward anything, it's a statement of outrage, however brilliant. I suppose all fictional characters, especially in adventure or heroic fiction, at the end of the day are our dreams about ourselves. And sometimes they can be really revealing. Everything you've ever read of mine is first draft. This is one of the peculiarities of the comics field. By the time you're working on chapter 3 of your masterwork, chapter 1 is already in print. You can't go back and suddenly decide to make this character a woman, or have this one fall out of a window. War is a perversion of sex. I don't really think that very much is interesting about the superhero as an archetype. In comics, the reader is in complete control of the experience. They can read it at their own pace, and if there's a piece of dialogue that seems to echo something a few pages back, they can flip back and check it out, whereas the audience for a film is being dragged through the experience at the speed of 24 frames per second. A lot of people have found the idea of living your life over and over again absolutely terrifying. There's some people that find it very comforting. There are others that are appalled by it. All culture must have arisen from cult. There's a widespread cultural barrenness across art and political culture. But there are some pockets of resistance on the extreme margins, like the techno-savvy protest movements, small press, the creator-owned comics, that seem to be getting some signs of hope for the future. I'm not personally connected to the internet, although nearly everyone that I know is, and many of them have a great time and no problems with it. And on the surface you can see that the internet could go an awful long way to educating, enlightening, informing and connecting the world. As far as I can see, it's not important that we have free will, just as long as we have the illusion of free will to stop us going mad. I really can't be bothered going to a barber and shaving every morning. That's nightmarish. I spent my teenage years covered in tiny little bits of toilet paper. One of the things I don't like about film is its incredible immersive quality. It's kind of bullying, it's very big, it's very flashy, it's got a lot of weight and it throws it around almost to the detriment of the rest of our culture. If you're functional, it doesn't matter if you're mad. In the human mind, the number of possible connections that can be made between neurons greatly exceeds the number of atoms in the universe. I was kind of a selfish child, who always wanted things his way, and I've kind of taken that over into my relationship with the world. Romantic poetry had its heyday when people like Lord Byron were kicking it large, but you try and make a living as a poet today, and you'll find it's very different. I've developed a theory that there's an inverse relationship between money and imagination. That if you've got lots of imagination then you don't really need much money, and if you've got lots of money then you won't bother with much imagination. While the revolution will be certainly televised, it strikes me that there is a strong possibility that the revolution will also be crowd-funded. No matter how powerful our political and religious leaders think they are as dust before the immense and implacable forces of history and progress. I just hope that they don't make too much of a mess or take too many more people down with them. If you're going to have any kind of political opposition in the 21st century, then it has to be as fundamentally liquid as the rapidly changing society we're living in. I suppose when I was writing V for Vendetta, I would in my secret heart of hearts have thought, wouldn't it be great if these ideas actually made an impact? So when you start to see that idle fantasy intrude on the regular world, it's peculiar. I love films that are made with almost no budget. I increasingly fear that nothing good can come of almost any adaptation, and obviously that's sweeping. There are a couple of adaptations that are perhaps as good or better than the original work, but the vast majority of them are pointless. It is my belief that all gods are stories, or at least the ideas behind stories, but stories or ideas that have become in some way almost alive and aware. It's not my job to tell people what to think. If I can actually in some way help the reader's own creative thinking, then that's got to be to everybody's benefit. To paint comic books as childish and illiterate is lazy. A lot of comic books are very literate, unlike most films. Despite the constant clamor for attention from the modern world, I do believe we need to procure a psychological space for ourselves. I apparently know some people who try to achieve this by logging off or going without their Twitter or Facebook for a limited period. I'm very distanced from the comics industry. I love the comics medium, but I have no time for the industry. Visit our website for more quotes, quoting.com.